I want to pick movies that are either very underrated or just films that I want to talk about, and I want to pick a specific element out of those movies and why I think that adds a lot to the film or why I like that element a lot. And I grabbed my DVD of The Village by M. Night Shyamalan. I popped it in the DVD player, turned on the projector, and sat down to watch this film again. This movie is not very well received on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's not very well received by critics, but I really enjoy this movie. So I think the reason for these bad reviews is this movie is horribly marketed. It's marketed as this intense horror thriller like a lot of other Shyamalan movies, and if you watch the trailer, you can see why people are mad at the film. But in reality, this movie is a really good drama romance with a lot of heart in it, and it still has scary moments. It still has that atmosphere that you get from the trailer, but it's not a horror film. First of all, I think it's a crime that this movie is not on Blu-ray. I think every Roger Deakins film should be on Blu-ray. I mean, you can watch this film just from the cinematography and have a good time with it, but even the DVD is still beautiful. So I love how this film starts. It brings you in with this zooming shot and kind of reminded me of Barry Lyndon a little bit, the slow zoom towards the grave. And we're introduced to this village of people. For the first couple minutes of this movie, we're not explained things in dialogue. We just see events happening. We see the woods. We see how menacing they are with the sound design, which is another really good element of this movie. We're kind of introduced to this council of elders who obviously later in the film will have a big part. And we're also introduced to Lucius, and he's our second main character. But a very important one. And due to the beginning of the film, where the young boy dies and the funeral happens, Lucius doesn't want that to happen again. This guy seems to be the only one who wants to be brave, and that's what we get from Lucius. By the way, brilliantly played by Joaquin Phoenix in this movie, but we really get a sense of bravery right off the bat as he requests the elders to go into the neighboring towns to get medicine so this sort of thing doesn't happen again. In this mix, we meet our other characters, Ivy Walker, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, and a man named Noah Percy, played by Adrian Brody. We learn that Ivy Walker is blind. We are also shown red berries that are buried underground by some townspeople, and we learn that the color red is not safe. And I just love, instead of being told that, M. Night Shyamalan actually shows the action of the berries being dug instead of someone just saying it. This is really thoughtful filmmaking, and little moments like that are just filled throughout this movie, which I love. Now, in The Sixth Sense, whenever something bad is about to happen, the color red appears. And M. Night Shyamalan uses that again with this film, obviously, as we just saw. And we also learn that the color yellow is the safe color. The first half of this movie is actually very unsettling. There's very creepy sound designs and slow zooms into the woods and really monstrous noises that we don't actually see the monster, which is always scarier. And by the way, Jesse Eisenberg is in this movie, which is very strange, and he plays a character that just kind of stands by the ledge of the forest and the safe zone. I guess a thing in this town is people stand by the edge for as long as they can until they get scared and run away. Another thing I want to point out, again, just beautiful cinematography. Not once in this movie does it feel like there are studio lights or anything of that nature. It's all sunlight, or during the night scenes, candlelight or lantern light, which brings a very authentic feel to this film and the time period. You'll also see that M. Night Shyamalan doesn't use a ton of close-ups in this movie. He usually uses his master shot throughout most of the dialogue and a few portrait shots, but he doesn't really cut to extreme close-ups very much, just to let you soak in all the beautiful set design, which is incredible, by the way. Now eventually we get to a very good jump scare. When a character is scouting from the tower, looks down, one of these monsters appears and we see it for the first time, and it's just such a good jump scare. really well done. And from here we go on to my favorite scene in the film, which I think is absolutely masterful. This is one of the best scenes I've ever seen in all of movies. Basically what happens is after the guy rings the bell for seeing the monster, everyone in the village flees to their houses in panic. Now at this point, Ivy and Lucius have a little bit of feelings for each other, and Ivy won't shut the door until Lucius is in sight because he's out somewhere in the village. As he's escaping this monster, the suspense builds up really well, and Ivy reaches her hand out and we see the monster come up from the darkness, and it's just such a good shot. That shot will never leave my mind. And then before the monster can grab her hand, Lucius grabs it, and then they go into the building in slow motion. And it's just combined with James Newton Howard's score, it's one of the best scenes I've ever seen. There's a trend in this movie that when things don't have dialogue and it's just M. Night Shyamalan directing and showing a story through pictures, that's where this movie shines the most for me. So the next scene is during a wedding, which, again, beautiful cinematography, set design, costume design. This wedding scene is absolutely stunning. Just the music and the scenery in this scene really transports you to the time period. And then a little kid comes up and tells them that he saw the monster again, and more panic ensues. So next we get this really great dialogue from Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard. They're just sitting on this porch, and there's this really eerie fog coming up. And this is just such well-written dialogue, and it's just a very heartfelt scene. I really like it. Now, apparently as Lucius and Ivy's love grows, Noah Percy gets very jealous as he loves Ivy as well. And the next scene that happens, again, just going back to the no dialogue, just straight direction from M. Night Shyamalan. The stabbing scene in this movie is brilliant because you don't hear the stab. When Joaquin Phoenix walks in the door and then just stares, you're kind of like, okay, what's going on? And you see their facial expressions, and then you see the knife, and that's just, it's really shocking, and it's very just well done. So a little bit later, Ivy finds Lucius's very critical conditioned body on the ground, and after hugging him, she gets his blood on her white dress. And to me, I don't know if M. Night Shyamalan really had this in mind when shooting this, but the red blood on her shirt is obviously the bad color, but I think it kind of signifies that she kind of is willing to do anything to save him, even if that involves going into the woods. And it's not that she's not scared to do it, it's just that she will do it out of her love. And after they enter the woods, I think during the village production there was very heavy snowfall that ruined a ton of production days and just caused a lot of damage to the production of the movie. But except for the bright yellow and the bright red, which are the two main colors of this film, it's a very earth-like movie. There's very brown and dark gray tones to this film, earth-like colors, and I think the snow actually really changes it up and adds a lot of character to the woods, and I don't know, I think it just adds something cool. And while Ivy is in the woods, we cut back to the village of all the elders conversating about how they didn't want her to go in, and it's not until a little bit later until we get the full twist, but we kind of know something weird is going on, and we get this really good monologue by William Hurt, who plays Ivy's dad in this movie. Really good, and I think probably the most underrated performance in this film. And then actually right after this, the big twist happens, and this is the most controversial part of this movie and why it's really not a lot of people's favorites, and I can see that. This is a very bold move by Shyamalan, and obviously this is spoilers, but please click off this video if you haven't seen this movie. I'm about to explain the twist. But essentially these people were living in a violent city, and I'm going to guess it's Philadelphia because that's where Shyamalan sets a lot of his movies. But they've had very violent crimes happen to their family members and close friends, and so the elders got together and made this village to protect everyone from the dangers of the outside world and basically start a new life. And so all these kids are growing up not even knowing that they're living in a modern world, but not really. And honestly, this twist works for me, and I'll tell you why. After the twist is explained, there's this little section of this movie before Ivy reaches the road that we really don't know if it's true or not of what he said, because Bryce Dallas Howard's performance in this scene where she's going through the woods is so good that, first of all, you believe her fear that she's feeling because she's not completely sure that her father is telling the truth. And we actually see our first main encounter with this monster is later revealed as Noah Percy. But until that is revealed, we really don't know what this monster is. And so that whole encounter, by the way, beautifully directed, it's still a scary scene. And the fact that the twist already happened pretty much does not dilute the fear at all in the scene, and I think it actually works. Now, after Ivy reaches the road is where my problems with the film kind of begin. I feel like when Shyamalan was writing the script, he kind of looked it over and looked for all the plot holes and kind of dumped them right in one spot, with pretty lazy voiceover or explanation. Now, before I was talking about how the elders wanted to start this new village to be outside of the dangerous world, that whole explanation is explained in voiceover, just over showing pictures of their old lives, and that is kind of lazy filmmaking to me, which is kind of weird because so much of this movie is just masterfully done and just beautifully directed. And then you have moments like this that I actually found kind of lazy, and I really don't like when movies just explain stuff to you. And after the park ranger dude gets to the little office with all the medicine inside of it, which, by the way, is M. Night Shyamalan's cameo in this film. But M. Night Shyamalan's character kind of just explains like, oh, what if planes fly over? And just kind of lazily fixes that plot hole. And there's a few other things, but it's just kind of lazy to me. But Ivy does end up getting the medicine and bringing it back and saving Lucius. And when this movie ended, I did not find myself cheated at all. I actually really enjoy this film, and even on a second watch, knowing what's going to happen, I still got the emotional impact that I think this film was trying to tell. And again, I don't think this is a perfect movie. I think this movie has flaws, like I just explained. There's a few lazy script errors, like why would Noah's parents just have that suit under their house? Why not just keep them all in the shed? But whenever the film does that, it's not really that bad, and it didn't really take me out of the movie. It's really sad that, in my opinion, one of Roger Deakins' most beautiful shot movies is not even on Blu-ray. I think this film should be on 4K, to be honest. This is a really good movie. All of the candle and lantern lit scenes are just so well done, and there's even deleted scenes in this movie. I saw a deleted scene that was so good, and probably the most gorgeous scene in this film was cut, and that just shows you that every scene in this movie is really good. I just think that M. Night Shyamalan used visuals so well in this movie, the colors, red and yellow, to tell a story. And while doing that, having really creepy visuals of woods and extremely disturbing sound design and slow zoom-ins to the woods, which I always find creepy. And speaking of sound design, James Newton Howard's score, I'm just going to say it again, the violin in this movie is just so heart-wrenching. I love it. It makes the film that much better. And yeah, while I don't think this is a perfect movie, I really enjoy this movie. I think it should get a lot more praise. I think a lot more people should see this film. And I honestly think it's one of Shyamalan's best movies. It's up there with Signs and Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense for me. It's really a solid film. So thank you guys for watching this video. I'm really looking forward to doing these more video essay oriented type videos instead of just plain quick movie reviews, because I know a lot of other YouTubers can do that better than I can. And I'm looking forward to doing more videos on movies that I think are underrated or movies that I really enjoy. So yeah, thank you guys for watching.